Welcome back to Ozarks Tonight. We are continuing our discussion with Dr. Brooks Blevins from Missouri State University about the Civil War here in the Ozarks. And tonight we're going to dive into the Battle of Wilson's Creek and vigilante groups that were running wild in the Ozarks around this time. One of the first major battles of the war, Wilson's Creek, takes place here in southwest Missouri. How did we get to that point where everything is focused on this area of the country?
Yeah, Missouri was just a wildfire in those early days of the war, and both sides were trying to take Missouri for their own. The Confederacy still held out hopes that Missouri was going to secede and join the other 11 Confederate states. The Union forces and the pro-Union militia in Missouri were determined that that was not going to happen, and so really the fate of Missouri came down to military might. It was whichever side could win these battles, could win the fight in the early days of the war. And the Southern forces under Sterling Price end up getting pushed into southwest Missouri very early in this conflict. And it's a Union army that makes its way down to Springfield that is here to sort of make sure that they stay in southwest Missouri or that they get pushed on down into Arkansas. And that's how Wilson's Creek happens. And what a lot of people don't realize is that there had been fighting in the Ozarks even before Wilson's Creek. There had been the Battle of Carthage near the town of Carthage that had taken place about a month or so before Wilson's Creek. So there was fighting already, and Wilson's Creek was kind of the culmination of this struggle between the northern forces and the southern forces over southern Missouri and maybe the fate of all of Missouri.
Definitely. And you hear a lot about like guerrilla groups of individuals running around the area as well. How much of an issue was that at the time?
Guerrilla warfare becomes a major problem in the Ozarks for civilians. The Ozarks really has, I always say it has two civil wars. It has your classic kind of Hollywood version of the Civil War with big marching armies and flags and drums and tents and all that kind of stuff, and pitched battles like Wilson's Creek and Pea Ridge and things like that. And that all happens in 1861 and 62. And then really at the end of 1862, many of the troops are pulled out of the Ozarks. They're pulled out of Arkansas and Missouri, and they're sent back east because this is considered sort of a less important territory for officials of the Confederacy in the United States. And that really leaves the country open for desperados of various kinds. And so you get these kind of guerrilla soldiers who, some of whom are sanctioned by either army. Many of them are just bad guys who are taking advantage of a breakdown in law and order, because the civil society just kind of falls apart those last couple of years of war. You know, your local governments, your county governments just cease to work anymore, and it's a perfect situation for bad people to come in and take advantage to target neighbors or people that they had beefs with before the war, sometimes to target people who are on the opposite side of whatever it is they're on. Some people just to steal and take advantage of people. And so those last couple of years, the Ozarks just becomes almost an unlivable place, but because of these people running, these small bands of bad people running around. And a lot of people just leave. A lot of people just become refugees and go somewhere else for their own safety.
Sounds like a dangerous time to live here for sure, and a scary time for those here. So the Civil War wraps up in 1861. The North keeps the Union preserved, and we go on from there, and everybody tries to rebuild the country, if you will. What was the lasting impact of that time period here in the Ozarks? How long did it take for this area to rebuild from that time, and what was the lasting impact going forward?
Yeah, there are a couple things. Of course, the most obvious lasting impact is freedom for African Americans. It's an end to slavery. And so you have many black people have already left the Ozarks by the time the Civil War is over, but many of them remain, and many come back home. And a place like Springfield becomes a beacon for freed men and women and their children to come, and because the Union Army is still here for a while. So that's the big thing. You also have a political division that results from the war and the immediate post-war. We have to go back a few years, not too many years, to remember when Southwest Missouri, even in local politics, was solidly Republican. Mm-hmm. Southeast Missouri was almost as solidly Democratic in the Democrat Party in those days, and that is an immediate result of the Civil War. The most colorful impact, I guess you could say, is what I call the last fighting of the Civil War. It's the rise of the Bald Knobbers down in Taney County, and that has roots directly in the Civil War. Union, Confederate divisions, Republican, Democrat divisions, they're fighting over control of a county, and those allegiances go all the way back to the Civil War.
Let's talk a minute about a history of the Ozarks, which you penned. It's going to be a 3-volume series. The first 2 volumes are out right now. For those who are interested in picking up a copy of the book, either 1 or 2 right now or 3 in the future, what can they expect to learn?
Well, I hope they learn a lot that they didn't know about the Ozarks. I certainly learned a lot that I didn't know about the Ozarks when I started on this project several years ago. But Volume 1 takes the story from the very earliest days up until the eve of the Civil War, and talks about the Native Americans of the Ozarks and early settlement and lead mining and all that kind of stuff. And Volume 2, which is what we've been talking about, is what I call the long Civil War era. And it talks about slavery and the Civil War, obviously, the 4 years of war, but Reconstruction and putting all the pieces of the Ozarks back together after the war is over. The growth of Springfield and the coming of industry and commerce and all that kind of stuff is in there. And I'm still working on Volume 3, but it is a project that covers the entire Ozarks region, which is bigger than I think most people realize. From almost up to St. Louis, down into northeastern Oklahoma, and way down into Arkansas. And it's a large region, and there's a lot of really fascinating history in the Ozarks. Definitely has a lot of history, and it's a lot of fun to talk about as well. Dr. Blevins, I want to thank you for coming in today. We love talking history here on the program. Thanks, John. We'll have more Ozarks tonight right after this.